Chapter 5. Medieval Theatre. The period of 500 to 1400 is referred to as the Middle Ages. From 1400 to the 17th century, the term Renaissance, or rebirth, is used. This is an era when the classics of Greece and Rome were lost, and then rediscovered. But these terms are arbitrary because in certain regions, the Middle Ages extended well into the 17th century and the application of classical aesthetics differs depending on which art form you are studying. When studying theatre, it is important to realize that medieval performances extended well into the period acknowledged to be the Renaissance in other disciplines. As we have seen, theatre concerns itself with the relationship between people and their society. Sometimes it takes longer for shifts to take hold in different aspects of culture. Before examining the theatre of the medieval age, we should turn our attention to the collapse of the Roman Empire. When we refer to the fall of Rome, we mean the fall of the Western Empire. In Byzantium, the Eastern Empire, there was no decline. The empire continued in the form of the Byzantine Church and the Eastern Christian tradition, later called the Orthodox Church. Byzantium's contribution to theatre history consists of the continuing popular presentations of mime, pantomime and gladiatorial combat. The Byzantine Empire also preserved the manuscripts of classical Greek drama. Their importance was recognized in the East and saved from destruction, and in 1453, when the Eastern Empire fell, they were transferred to the West. Once this happened, classical writings such as Aristotle fueled the renaissance of classical thought. In the West, the empire was already Christianized before it fell. Many of the pagan civilizations who invaded afterward became Christian. With the decentralization of power, feudalism became the dominant mode of social organization. Society was agrarian, and most of the technological developments of the age were dedicated to making land more productive and farming equipment more efficient. But the mother of all sciences was Christian theology. Even after Aristotle and other classical philosophers were rediscovered, in the High or Late Middle Ages there was a rebirth of the town as a center of commerce and trade. Towns became self-governing units independent of the feudal system. They had a liberalizing effect on education and people's self-image. In many places, serfdom was eradicated in favor of more humanistic views of the individual. While the people of the late Middle Ages did not adopt Greek or Roman religion, they were influenced by classic philosophy and science. An example of how classical literature was interpreted through a Christian perspective can be found in the works of Roswitha, the earliest known female dramatist. She wrote and read in Latin and, like other medieval scholars, she studied classical Roman texts for their form and style. Her plays are modeled after the Roman playwright Terence, but she felt the subject matter was unsuitable for Christian readers. Her plays exemplify Christian virtue and virginity. Without an active theatre tradition, it is unlikely that these plays were intended for performance. Instead, they might have been read individually or in small groups for theological instruction. The most prevalent and well-documented type of performance from the Middle Ages is liturgical drama. These were tropes spoken or sung in Latin as part of a church service, performed by the celebrating priests. Latin was the language of the church and scholarship, but was not spoken by everyone. The worshippers would have been familiar with some well-known Latin phrases, but most of the dialogue in these short pieces would have been incomprehensible without the actions and gestures of the performers. This might explain why the Church, which condemned theatre so vehemently in the early Middle Ages, became the instrument of its rebirth in later years. Eventually these plays became more elaborate and needed to be staged outside the church, and the vernacular, or everyday language of the people, was used. The cost of production was taken over by various trade guilds, leaving the space of the church to be for worship, while the theatre was performed in the courtyard or town square. There are two kinds of religious vernacular. Drama. The mystery play, named after the ministerium or religious service, depicted biblical events from creation to the Last Judgment. Mystery plays that depicted the life of Jesus and the apostles were also called passion plays, meaning that they depicted the passion of Christ's suffering. Morality plays dramatized moral tales and depicted people as concepts and symbols. The most popular morality play, Every Man, depicts people in roles such as good deeds and strength. As this type of performance became more established, they were organized into cycles, with each story acting as an episode to a larger drama. Because they were meant for large audiences, they appealed to popular tastes by including spectacular special effects and depicting biblical characters as living in their present day. For example, Abraham and Isaac were not portrayed as Old Testament Jews, but were shown to be ordinary medieval workers. Comedy was also incorporated for entertainment, but in a way that preserved the dignity and integrity of the original stories. The textbook gives a good example of this. In its discussion of the second shepherd's play, the story is of the shepherds, who are told by an angel to look for the newborn Jesus. They come across the house of a thief named Mike who has stolen a sheep and dressed it as a baby in order to hide it. The comedy and farce stems from the shepherds wondering if this is the baby Jesus. In the second half of the play, the sheep is discovered and returned, and the shepherds are directed to the right manger where the story follows the biblical source more faithfully. The most important contribution to performance from this period is the episodic form. Unlike the climactic form, as written about by Aristotle, the episodic form is more loosely structured, changing locations and does not have a single plot. The second shepherd's play has two plots. They were played in sequence, so they echo each other as they explore the same theme. Episodic drama eventually influences the theatre of later periods. William Shakespeare and Lope de Vega are examples of later playwrights who combine episodic and climactic structures in their works. Performers in the plays were amateurs, but as production became more complex, some professional performers may have gotten involved. Some had a cast of hundreds, so to keep things running smoothly, a pageant master supervised the mounting of the plays. The special effects, some involving elaborate machines and pyrotechnics, were overseen by the keeper of the secrets. The performance space was a series of wagons, so the plays could be moved from location to location in sequence, like parade floats. The audience could stay in one area of the town and see each play as they moved along their circuit. If a play was performed using stationary staging, then the scenery would have consisted of mansions. These set pieces showed all the locations of the play at once: heaven, the temple, the town, and even the mouth of hell. As the characters moved, crossing from mansion to mansion, the audience knew that the setting had changed. Whether the performance happened on a wagon with specific scenic elements, or in front of mansions showing a wide variety of locations, they both needed a neutral playing platform in front for the actors to perform on. Some texts call this the plateau. This neutral platform became the prime element of theatre staging in later periods and was significant for Elizabethan and Spanish theatre in later periods. Morality plays also provided a strong influence on later works, particularly in English theatre. A morality play concentrated on the struggle between opposing forces. This crucial and engaging element of drama was later refined by the Elizabethan playwrights Christopher Marlowe and William Shakespeare. In the High Middle Ages, the period just leading into the Renaissance saw friction between secular and religious studies. Secular entertainments never went away. Wandering minstrels and bards kept the tradition of professional storytelling alive. There were a number of performances and festival traditions that were, at one time, pagan rituals of fertility and sensual freedom. The Maypole is a good example of a pagan ritual that could not be completely coerced out of medieval life. It lingered as a celebration, even after these groups of people were converted to Christianity. Out of the secular tradition came two more types of performance: folk plays and farce. Folk plays depicted the acts of a well-known hero, while farce, as always, depicted human foible. Secular pieces were also performed by professional troupes as short pieces performed in between the courses of a lord's banquet. These were called interludes. Organizing performance in this way allowed the wandering troupes to guarantee more consistent work. Religious drama eventually fell out of favor. Due to the rise of the Protestant Reformation, there was friction between Protestants and Catholics across all of Europe, sometimes erupting into bloody conflicts, especially in England. As a result, Queen Elizabeth I banned all religious drama in 1559. Secular elements of performance such as the farce in the Second Shepherd's Play and the human struggle in Everyman overcame the spiritual content. Eventually religious drama declined. As secular drama flourished, professional performers were employed at the courts, setting the stage for Renaissance theatre. This concludes the review of Chapter 5. Thank you for listening and goodbye for now.